Good afternoon. Where do I start? I came to Canada in February 1981 for a 6-month contract with the British Nursing Association. St. John, New Brunswick had a severe shortage of nurses, so they brought over 47 British nurses to fulfill their nursing needs in 2 hospitals in St. John, New Brunswick. I was much younger then and much more social, so my best friend and I, who I was travelling with, arrived at the nurses' residence, checked in and went to the nearest bar, which happened to be in the Holiday Inn, which was practically next door to the nurses' residence. There was only 2 people in the bar besides my friend and me, 2 men who were eating supper. The elder of the 2 men came over. He heard that we were English and said in a broad Geordie accent, "Do you want to join us, pet?" That was a pickup line. It was terrible. But we did join them, and his name was Dennis Murphy, otherwise known as Spud. He introduced first Hilary, my friend, and then he introduced me to Speedy, who became Ned, and said, "Speedy, this is Maggie. Marry her. Why should you be happy?" I wasn't too enthralled with this guy called Speedy. I'd been watching him. He'd eaten 1 dinner, then ordered another, and I'm thinking, oh my Lord, what a pig. Anyway, 18 months later, I married that pig. Speedy, who will and I never did find out why he was called Speedy, who from now on will be known as Ned, was a second engineer at the time on a Shell oil tanker that was in dry dock in St. John whilst they took asbestos out of the ship. I saw him almost daily from the 18th of February till the 23rd of April, and then his ship left St. John. We hadn't made any promises about seeing each other, and I was saddened to think I might never see him again. I needn't have worried. On my last day in St. John, which was August the 31st, I came out of the hospital to catch the bus, and there was Ned waiting in his car. We were almost inseparable until the following April. We travelled all down the eastern seaboard, stopping at every battleground on the way. His choice, not mine. And we spent a load of money. We travelled first class. My husband used to tell everybody that my idea of roughing it was a Holiday Inn. And so when the money ran out, we decided to get married. We married in October 1982, and 3 weeks later, I emigrated to Canada. We moved to Halifax so that Ned could go to Marine School and get his chief engineer's ticket. The first few months were idyllic. Ned was at school all day, and we had evenings and weekends together. It didn't prepare me at all for life as a seafarer's wife. Once he'd completed the first part of his ticket, he had to go back to work, and he got a second engineer's job overseeing the building of a seismic vessel. The vessel was being built in Sorel, Quebec, so Ned flew to Sorel, and I was on my own for the first time as a seafarer's wife. It was easy, wasn't too bad at all. I could do it. Of course, we were on the phone to each other every night of the week, so I really didn't have a clue what it was like to be a seafarer's wife. As soon as the ship was launched, it set sail for Asia, and the phone calls became short. Say what needs to be said affairs. The company allowed the seafarers 10 minutes per month on the phone, and after that, the calls were billed at $19.95 a minute. With this amount was being taken off his wages. There were times the first year of our marriage when most of his wages went on phone calls. I finally knew what it was like to be a seafarer's wife, married by phone. He was gone for several months, and I was miserable. I hadn't made one single friend in Halifax, and I was starting to worry whether I would ever make it as a seafarer's wife. When I met Ned, he'd never been married, but everyone on his ship other than him had been married at least once. One guy had been married 4 times. I've no idea why. I was starting to understand how difficult it was to be married to a seafarer. I eventually met some British girls working as nannies. They were a lifesaver for me. I finally had someone to talk to, and in the same language. Ned came home, and we got into a routine. We lived well on the excellent money he was making, and I made frequent trips home to England to visit my ailing father. I got used to Ned being away, but I didn't like it. I loved the time he was home, and after a couple of years, we decided to start a family. I wasn't good at pregnancy. I was sick from the moment of conception to delivery and had to spend the time in the hospital on several occasions. With Ned away and no means of communication, they were worrying times for him. He would try and phone home, and of course nobody was picking up, and he never knew the reason. It was an awful time for him. Leading up to the delivery, we were nervous, as Ned was due back on the ship. His company was calling several times a day to see if I was in labour, and at one point I just started crying when I answered the phone, and they asked, was there any progress, as they really needed him back on board. I finally went into labour, but after 3 days, nothing was progressing. My daughter, this was going to be what it was like for the rest of our lives from then on in. She's been late for everything ever since. She was 11 days late, and she's never been on time in her life. After 3 days of labour, I ended up having an emergency C-section at 10 to 10 on Wednesday night. Ned left at 8 o'clock Thursday morning and flew to Hawaii to join his ship on its way to the Philippines. If I thought life was difficult before, I was wrong. Life was now difficult. Our baby, Esme, had severe colic, and there was no respite. All my friends were single, they were still out partying, while I was walking the halls with a colicky baby. The first year of our daughter's life was a blur, and I swore there would only ever be one child. Life went on. Ned had never been around a baby, so he was nervous. When he arrived home after that first trip, after Esme was born, I literally was waiting at the door. I think I practically threw the baby at him. I was just wanting to go in the shower and stand in that shower till the water ran cold. Well, after about a minute, there was a knock on the door and Ned shouting, "She's crying, I don't think she likes me." So, no more luxury showers. The next time he left, it was even harder, and it never got any easier. After a couple of years, we decided to try for another baby. I'm sure it's God's plan that you forget all that pain and discomfort. It's his way of making sure we keep the planet populated. I got pregnant straight away and wrote to tell Ned so. He received the letter telling him of my pregnancy the same day I lost the baby. It was Valentine's Day, and he called to share the joy, but had to be told there would be no baby this time around. There's probably not much more lonely than losing your baby. But I know it was much worse for him. He was stuck out in the middle of the ocean on a ship, and after that, I tried never to give Ned bad news while he was away. I could imagine the stress it would cause to worry about something you're unable to deal with because of distance, time zones, and company policy. I got pregnant again, and this time Ned was home for the C-section and 6 weeks after the birth. Over the years, I've listened to my girls discuss their relationship with their father. They both believe they bonded differently, and observing them, I know they did. I tend to agree and think that Esme, our first child, suffered by not having those first important few weeks with her dad. Rowan was always visibly much closer to her father. She'd spent those first 6 weeks. He literally carried her around for 6 weeks. The years went on, and although Ned would have time off, it was often taken up with refresher courses, simulator courses, marine emergency duty courses, all of which could no longer be done in Halifax due to the Marine School having been relocated to Cape Breton. This meant more time away in a hotel, so near and yet so far. There were several occasions when he was so near and yet so far. One Christmas, his oil tanker was due to come into Halifax, and we were so excited we were going to see him on Christmas Day. They brought it in and put it at anchor. We could see it from where we lived. And then they changed the orders on Christmas Day and sailed it out again. It was not one of our better Christmases. He was away for most Christmases and birthdays. The girls grew up being told, "Don't answer the phone," in case it was the company trying to call Ned back to work. One year, our youngest picked up the phone on December the 23rd, and that was the end of the Christmas we were supposed to have together. He left on December the 24th. My girls never answer the phone the first time around. They always wait and check who it is, and then they'll phone you back. That all those years of being, "Don't answer the phone," they've never left them. As the years went on, the girls became accustomed to not having their father around. They celebrated Christmas in March or November and birthdays on all sorts of dates beside their actual birthdays. They didn't have a father to help with homework most of the time, and I could have really done with the help with that math. I really missed my husband at those times. Being married to a seafarer changed me intrinsically. I'd always been quite social, but after attending event after event with no spouse in tow, it became depressing. I went to neighbourhood parties where women treated me as a threat, and men made snide remarks about dropping around one evening as I must be lonely without Ned. My stock reply was, "Not that lonely." Eventually, I stopped going to these events, and it was hard to face some of my female friends knowing what their husbands had suggested. Another aspect of being married to a seafarer was trying to hold down a career. Babysitters required steady paychecks, and it was irking to pay for childcare when Ned was home and wanting to care for his children. So eventually we sat down and made the decision for me to give up work until the children were older. That sounded like a great plan, and it was fun for about 3 weeks. And then I realized I still needed something else. That's when I started at the mission. It was 1991. I went to the mission with a 21-month-old and a 4-year-old in tow. It was a win-win situation. I could get the stimulation I needed and still have my children with me. Being married to a seafarer sets you apart. You are not quite a single mother, but you're left making many major decisions. I purchased houses, cars, and organised our finances when Ned was away. I fixed lawnmowers, I fixed dishwashers, and I've grieved alone at the loss of my parents and close friends. It also enabled me to live a great life, which suited my independent spirit. So, even though being married to a seafarer wasn't for everyone, it was the best thing that could have happened to me. I will add that my husband died in 2003.